Is there anybody in the audience that may have some questions for Tia?
Yes.
Well, first, thank you. I think this film is such a great public service. The machinations of Koch, they're still like. Over the past 30 years or so, the number of union households has declined from about 30% of the American workforce to a little over 10. Do you see any upside on the horizon? Is so much money arrayed against organized labor?
Well, I think the fact that they've mobilized to essentially undercut the cloud of organized labor, and they did it precisely because of the power of individuals aggregating their money. I think that that's a statement as to the power, that working people have, that they're trying to, suppress. I don't think there's an upside there. I mean, I was stunned when we were in Wisconsin to realize that, the Scott Walker's bashing of the unions had very little to do with wages and hours and pensions, and it had a whole lot to do with Citizens United and his interest in disabling his Democratic opponents. And look, we honed in on Scott Walker. We didn't realize that he was essentially going to be the anointed one that the Kochs now, 2-3 years later, would put their money behind in 2016. We knew he had presidential ambitions. We suspected that. We understood that he was a rising star in the GOP. We knew that there was the Koch connection to his, election as we laid out. I guess we didn't realize that we'd be sitting here now with Scott Walker as one of the three, most legitimized candidates with a whole lot of money, ready to go. I think April 19th, a couple of days ago in New York, the Kochs were at a dinner with Scott Walker, and they made it clear that he was their man for 2016. I think it's very bad news. I think money, whether it's money behind Republican candidates or Democrat candidates, has overtaken the system. It's not a party thing. It's really about, working people and ordinary people versus these guys, these very few. So I'm a little demoralized, I guess. But you tell me, what are the bright spots that you see?
Hard to say.
Yeah.
In New York, we have a governor who's a Democrat, but he's as alive with money interests as most of the Republicans are, and he has decided to be anti-union. So, yeah, I was hoping you'd have more money.
Well, I do know, look, in terms of money in politics, there's a movement to force some transparency around dark money spending. In California, they passed a bill last year that, forces dark money groups to come out of the closet. And that's good, and I think there's a lot of that kind of sunshine legislation proposed or being enacted around the country. Hundreds of communities and towns, as we end the film on that note, have passed resolutions and referendums and ballot measures calling for, an overturning of Citizens United. It's not clear, that will have much of an impact on legislation given the current Congress. I think that 80% of the American public are fed up with money in politics, and unfortunately, I think a lot of the money, it doesn't just impact how people vote and who wins ultimately, and mostly the person with most money wins, but not always. But what it always does is it impacts the debate, and so whether or not Scott Walker won, they poured a whole lot of money into broadcast television, into print media, to help frame the conversation about the public policies that affect every one of us. And I think that that's very frightening.
It's too cerebral to manipulate the people, though. They can be manipulated with fear or hatred of unknowns or other people. But if you have to think about what Citizens United means, like its impact mathematically on economics, it's just not a winner. You can't get people to think.
People Well, one of the reasons we wanted to make this film is because we wanted to understand exactly what Citizens United was and how it was playing out on the ground. It is, hard to kind of grasp. You don't have to be a constitutional scholar to understand, though, the impact on the air that you breathe and the conditions that you send your kids to school under. But it is, I think they've been able to represent it as free speech and manipulate people in that way.
I mean, I don't know, I would suggest that there is something of a bright spot. I mean, just sort of looking at recent events in New York. I mean, Cuomo had to have been responding to just the overwhelming objection to fracking, that it could have so easily just rolled, we could have easily become Pennsylvania in that regard. And there was such a pushback against it that he flinched on that. We've got 15% of parents withholding their kids from testing, from Common Core testing. The numbers of people that are opting out of tests are huge. I mean, and sort of acting, that's kind of acting in the most immediate theater of action, but people are hugely angry about the corporate takeover of the educational system. And people are talking about Pearson publishers who would have never heard of Pearson, 6 months ago. So there's clearly at least moments of grassroots activism that, maybe not dealing specifically with labor, but I think people are drawing connections.
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder about the demographics of the United States too, in the sense that it's changing so very much. I wonder if a white Caucasian male is really going to make it president of the United States. I tend to think they're going to have a hard time. Now,
Well, the
looking at that
Latino,
movie with the money,
Yeah.
but that turns the tables.
yeah, I mean, I think you saw that in the runoff for the Democratic candidacy for governor in Chicago this last month, when Rahm Emanuel got a run for his money, but he had a whole lot of it. But Shui, this Latino politician, got a good chunk of the vote.
Right.
Not enough.
Not enough.
But they
That's
did,
what-
force a runoff, and Rahm was sweating it out, and possibly it will influence, how he treats the, community in the next term.
I'm curious as to, when did you finish this film?
We finished the film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2013, in January of 2013.